Hilchos, Tefillin, Umezuzah, v'Sefer Torah. Be'ezrat Hashem, we're starting a new set of laws. The laws of Tefillin, Mezuzah, and the Torah scroll. The Rambam puts them all together because they all have many of the same rules about how they're written. Yesh bichlalan chamesh mitzvot aseh, v'zeu pratan. Says the Rambam, we're going to discuss in the next 10 chapters, Be'ezrat Hashem, till the middle of next week, 5 positive mitzvahs. V'zeu pratan, and these are their details. Aleph, liyot tefillin ala rosh. There should be tefillin on the head. And bet, lekashram al hayad. To tie them onto the hand. When it comes to the head, the Rambam says they should be. When it comes to the hand, he says you tie them. Because that's the mitzvah. The mitzvah on the hand is just to tie them. The minute that you tie it, you did the mitzvah. With the shalosh, every second that it's on your head, you're fulfilling another mitzvah. That's why the Rambam puts shalosh first. Typically, you would think it goes in order. First hand, then head. But he puts head. Yeah, he puts head first because the mitzvah is more constant. And in this book, we go in order of constancy. The more constant a mitzvah is, the more precedence it gets in the book. Gimel, likboa mezuzah b'pitchei ha'sharim. The third mitzvah is to set up a mezuzah on the entrance of the gateways, and in fact all doors. Daled, lichtov kol ish sefer Torah la'atzmo. Every Jew, every man has to write a sefer Torah for himself. It's the ideal mitzvah. You have to have your own Torah scroll. Hey, lichtov hamelech sefer sheni la'atzmo. The king has to write a second Torah scroll for himself. Kedei sheyiyu lo shnei sefrei Torah, so he can have 2 Torah scrolls. Ubiur kol mitzvot elu biprakim elu. And the explanation of all of these mitzvahs are going to be in the coming chapters. We have 4 prakim on Tefillin, 2 on Mezuzah, and another 4 on the Sefer Torah. So just for a second, let's take a look at what Tefillin are made out of. And here we have, this is the Tefillin Shel Yad, Tefillin Shel Rosh. We're going to learn more about this in the coming days, but it essentially starts off as one big piece of leather. This is a massive piece of leather. And you mold it to the point where you make, for the Shel Rosh, you make 4 compartments. And then it kind of gets shaped into this. See, it's tougher.
I sent the video once to the group.
Yeah, you can see it online how they do this. And in the end, it becomes like this. But the bottom line is that on the inside, you have 4 compartments. You end up with four boxes. I don't know if you can see it in here also.
And this
right?
is done from the...
This is done from the leather of a cow today. Huh? It could technically be from any kosher animal, but today they use cows. And then what you do is, you have over here 4 parshiot. These are 4 separate scrolls. Starts with, where is it over here? Kadesh li kol bechor. You see one? This is one. V'daber Hashem el Moshe lemor, Kadesh li kol bechor. That's the parsha that we say if you wear Rabbeinu Tam's. You say this parsha when you're wearing the Rabbeinu Tam's. So that's one portion. Then you have a second portion. V'hayaki eviacha. See, they're all written on 4 lines. Then you have the Shema. That's classic. Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. It's the shortest one. V'ahavta Hashem Elokecha. Then you have V'hayayim Shamoah. Okay? And these 4 parchments, they get rolled up like this, and they each go in to one of these compartments. See, for example, here you have an actual shalosh with a. This is how you wrap it. There's a scroll goes inside. It gets wrapped around with like a little piece of cloth here, and then also wrapped around with veins of an animal, sinews. It's called gidim. And then it goes in to the compartment like this, and all 4 go inside. When it comes to the hand tefillin, all 4 get written on one long scroll. This goes into the hand right here, you see? They're all 4 one next to another, and they get rolled up, and there's only one compartment. And then they go like this, you see? Here's the hole of the Shel Yad, and it hops right in. Boom, it stays inside there, and that it folds up, and that's what you're wearing on your tefillin. All right, we'll take a look at more of these things soon. Meanwhile, let's start learning the Rambam. That's the basic outline of the tefillin. Now let's see it inside. Perek Rishon, Halacha Aleph, chapter 1. Arba parshiyot elu. These 4 portions of the Torah that we just saw, Shehen, which they are, Kadesh Li, the portion of Kadesh Li where Hashem says to sanctify all the firstborns to Him. The Hayaki V'yacha Hashem, the next part of that paragraph where Hashem will bring you into Israel. Shebesefer Ve'ele Shmot, those 2 portions are in the book of Shemot. Ushma V'hayayim Shamoah, as well as the other 2 portions of Shema and V'hayayim Shamoah. Hen Shenichtavot B'fnei Atzman. These are the ones that are written on their own. They're not part of the Torah scroll. They are also in the Torah scroll, but they're also written separately. Umechapinotan be'or, and we cover them with leather. V'nikraim tefillin, and they're called tefillin. Umanichinotan al harosh. You put them on the head. V'koshinotan al hayad, and you also tie them onto the hand. V'afilu kotzo shel ot achat me'arba parshiyot elu. Even The kotz, the thorn, I don't know if you can see up close over here, but on many of the letters, there are little kotzim coming up. See? So even if one of them is missing, see that? Yeah. It used to be a kosher one. By the way, I should say a big thank you to Rabbi Teitelbaum. He gave me all this equipment. He's the Sofer Stam. And he gave me access to a lot of his resources to use for this next week and a half.
I didn't know he was
Yeah, he's a Sofer.
he checks the
Tefillin, he checks mezuzahs, all the things. So, even if one thorn, even if one crown of one letter of the 4 portions is missing, ma'akevet kulan min Torah. It's essential to all of them, biblically. In other words, it holds it back. If you're missing one crown, one thorn, the whole thing is disqualified. Ad sheyu nichtavot shlemot kitikunan, to the point that they have to be written completely as they should be. And we'll see tomorrow a list of which exactly letters have to have crowns and which ones not. Halacha bet, v'chen shtei parshiyot sheba mezuzah. Same thing applies to the 2 portions in the mezuzah. Here we have a small mezuzah, just a sample. See a mezuzah, there's 2 portions, Shema v'hayim shamoah. Same rules apply. Shein Shema v'hayim shamoah, afilu ot achat, mishtei parshiyot, even one letter of both of these portions. You want to see it more up close? Can I pass them down to you? You'll take a look? Okay, here. Pass them down, you can see the sample.
I know what about it.
Oh, the tefillin cases you want to see?
Well, without the film,
Okay. Sure. You can pass them around if you want to see more. But make sure I get them all back, okay? Where am I over here? Afilu ot achat mishtei parshiyot, even one letter from the 2 portions, im chaser kotzo. If its crown is missing, ma'akev min Torah. Biblically, it's essential. It holds it back. It disqualifies it. Ad sheyu shtehen nichtavot shlemot, till the point that both of them have to be written fully and completely. V'chein sefer Torah, also a Torah scroll, shechiser afilu ot achat. If it's missing even one letter, there's over 300,000 letters in the Torah. If even one is missing, pasul, it's disqualified. Halacha Gimel says the Rambam, asara dvarim yesh tefillin. There are 10 special rules when it comes to the tefillin. Kulan halacha Moshe misinai, v'kulan ma'akvin. They've all been passed down as a halacha received from Moshe on Mount Sinai, and they're all essential. Lefichach, therefore, im shina be'achat mehen. If you changed even one of them, harei tefillin psulot, the tefillin are disqualified. Shnayim hin biktivatan. 2 of these rules apply to the way we write the tefillin. That's the ones we're going to talk about today. Ushmona bechipuyan ukshirat ritzuotehen. And the other 8 are about their covering, the box of the tefillin, and the way you tie the straps. That's going to be discussed in later chapters. And these are the following 2 rules when it comes to the writing. Number 1, shekotvinotan bidyo. You have to write them with a special ink. And number 2, v'sheyeyu nichtavin al haklaf. They have to be written on a special parchment. It says the Rambam halacha dalet. Just check this out for a second. I got a video on YouTube. You can see how it's made. Basically, this is pretty much the ink of today. I don't know if you can see it. This is a galnut. That's called a apatz in Hebrew. And you take that, to show you, he gives a whole long speech over here. But then the bottom line is that you pour them in. He takes some of this galnut that's ground. You put it into 1 cup of water. Okay, now it's sitting there. Then he has this. If you can see from up close, it's called sraf ilan. I'm not sure I can. Try my best. Let me see. Nah, that's the brightest it's going to get. Anyway, there's a little piece over here of what's called tree sap. Sraf ilan. He doesn't use it because it's expensive and he doesn't want to melt it. But basically, this also goes into the mixture. And then you get what's called kankantom. I don't know what it's called in English, but some blue, it's like a blue little thing. Blue powder. And he puts that into the 2nd cup. Now watch what happens. Puts it into the 2nd cup. He's darshaning about it a little bit. Put it into the 2nd cup. Just a tiny bit of powder in each one. A tiny bit of powder. Now you just mix the 2. Watch what happens. It's incredible.
מערבבים את שתי החומרים, כמו שאתם רואים,
Watch this, boom, black.
מיד זה מתחיל להשחיר.
See that? Boom, it becomes an ink.
כרגע זה דליל, אי אפשר לכתוב בזה.
So he's saying it's still very wet. You can't write with it properly, but when you put that other thing, that other piece of tree sap inside the other cup, then it becomes thicker. Also, you have to leave it overnight, and then boom, you have ink for tefillin
זה
and
בעצם
Torah
ככה
scrolls.
יוצרים את הדיו. עכשיו, כמו שאמרתי,
It's a proper masori. Yeah, the Rambam has a bit of a different version. We're going to see like a little different exactly how the ink is made. But it's the bottom line is the same thing. You're taking these two chomarim, these two materials, mix them together, and then it becomes ink. Huh? You could, sure, yeah. Rabbi Teitelbaum gave me some of it. You have it over here. Right here. Ready to go?
But that's kosher.
Ink.
Then why are you showing
Huh?
the long process?
Because the Rambam goes through the long process.
Shortcuts.
Halakha Daled. Ketzad maaseh hadio. How is the ink made? Mikabtzin he'ashan shel shmanim. You take the vapor, the smoke of oils, or shel zefet v'shel shava v'chayotze bahen, or of tar or of wax. Basically, you take a piece of glass. This is the way the Rambam used to make it. A piece of glass, and you have some tar and oil. You light it, and you let the smoke come up and collect on the glass. So you have the vapors.
Still.
Kind of. V'govlino to bisraf ha'ilan u'bima'at dvash. Then you knead it into that thing we saw before, a little piece of tree sap and a little bit of honey. V'lotitino to harbe. And you soak it a lot. V'dachino to. And you grind it. Ad she'ya'aser rekikin. Till it becomes like wafers. They used to store the ink as like blocks of ink, dry. U'miyabshino to u'matznino to. And you dry it and you store it. Ubishat ktiva, then when you want to write with it, shorehu b'mei afatzim, v'chayotzebo, you soak it in what we saw before, the gallnut juice water. That first cup, v'kotevbo, and you write with it. She'im timchakenu yenimchak. The reason we use this recipe is because it's erasable. Many times you make a mistake when writing, you have to erase something. So it has to be erasable. If it's another tint, it's not erasable. This is the ink that it's the choicest mitzvah to use to write Torah scrolls, tefillin, and mezuzahs. If you wrote any three Torah scrolls, tefillin, mezuzah, with just a mixture of gallnut juice and the kankantom, which is they call it vitriol, that's the blue stuff we saw before, even though it stands and is not erased, it's kosher. But ideally you want to get an ink that's somewhat erasable. And this is actually the ink that they use today. You can see it here. This one's called smichut regila, regular thickness. They have even thicker ones to hold even stronger. And that's what you use for ink. Halacha hey, in kain, if so, that in the end you can use whatever kind of black ink you want. Mami ataha halacha. Shene'emar leMoshe misinai. She'yuktuvim bidyo. What is this halacha from Moshe coming to exclude? When you say you have to write it with ink, in the end you tell me I can make whatever mixture I want. So what are we excluding? It's excluding other types of colors. Like red ink, green or yellow ink, something like that. If you wrote a Torah scroll, tefillin, or mezuzah, even one letter, with other types of shades of colors, or with gold. The Talmud says that they once gave a Torah scroll to Alexander the Great, and they wrote all the Shemot Hashem, all the names of Hashem in gold. So that's no good. Elu psulim, those are disqualified. That's as far as the first halacha of writing with ink. Now let's talk about writing on the parchment. So,
That may have been the attempt to
no tefillin class would be complete without a proper cowhide. This is a literal cowhide right here. This is where your Torah scrolls begin. Okay, they have, see it here? This is a proper cow. And what you have is the leather in the back, that's the hide. And then this is the hairy side. The Torah talks about a lot. We're going to see about the hairy side and it's called mimul habasar, the flesh side, because it's the side that was attached to the flesh, the side of the hair. Ultimately, you take off all the hair, and you're left with just a piece of leather. So the Rambam says the following. Let's talk a little bit about this leather. Halacha vav shalosh orot hen. There are three categories of hides. Gvil, uklaf, v'duchsustus. They're called gvil, klaf, and duchsustus. The Rambam will immediately define what they are. Ketzad, what does this mean? Lokchin or behema o chaya. You start off with a hide of an animal or a beast, because any kosher animal is fine to use for leather. Uma'avirin ha'se'ar mimenu tchila. You take off all the hair. V'achar kach molchin oto b'melach. Then you salt it, because the salt helps to shrink. V'achar kach me'abdin oto b'kemach. Then you work it with flour, but really resin. V'achar kach ba'afza, then with galnut juice. V'chayotze bo, or anything else, midvarim shemechavtzin et ha'or u'mechaskinoto, with things that shrink the leather and toughen it. V'zeu hanikra gvil. So if you were just to take off the hair from this hide, the total parchment, the total leather is called gvil. Gvil literally means rough surfaced. So the Rambam translates it. So it's rough because it's the raw parchment as it is. Now what happens, let's say you have over here, here's the napkin, right? It's two-ply napkin. So you have the parchment, and then let's say you divide it in half. You cut it thinly. Okay? Cut it down the middle. Just make a little demonstration. We cut it down, now we have two parts. So the gvil can be divided in two. Says the Rambam halacha zayin, v'im lakchu ha'or, achar she'eviru se'aro. You took the skin, after you took off the hair, v'chilku oto be'ovyo lishnayim, and you split it thickwise, on its thickness into two, k'moshe ha'abdanin osin, as the tanners do, that's what they do, ad she'yu shnei orot, till you end up with two skins. Echad dak, one is thinner, husha mimul hasear, that's the one that used to be where the hair was. The echad aveh, one is thicker, v'husha mimul habasar. That's the one opposite where the flesh was. Then you take these two skins, v'yibdu oto b'melach v'achar kach b'kemach v'achar kach b'afza v'chayotze bo. You worked it with salt and with resin and with galnut. So then, zeh hachelek shemimul hasear nikra klaf. This side, that was by the hair, is called klaf. V'zeh shemimul habasar nikra duchsustus. And this one on the flesh side is called duchsustus. Other manuscripts have the opposite. This one is called duchsustus, this one's called klaf. Makes a lot of problems. But the point is that you have the gvil is the 2-in-1, and then when you divide them, one is klaf, one is duchsustus. Says the Rambam halacha chet, halacha leMoshe miSinai. It's a tradition from Moshe on Mount Sinai. Sheyu kotvin sefer Torah al hagvil. That you should write a Torah scroll on the raw parchment. Don't divide it in half. The kotvin binkom hasear, and you write it on the side of the hair, where the hair was shaven off. That's where you write the Torah scroll. It's also halacha v'sheyu kotvin hatfilin ala klaf. You write tefillin on the klaf. That's the part that was near the hair. When you split it in half, the outer side of the hide. V'kotvin binkom habasar, but you write on the inside, the place closer to the flesh. V'sheyu kotvin hamezuzah al duchsustus. The third part of the halacha l'Moshe miSinai is that you should write the mezuzah on the duchsustus, on the inner skin, the one that was near the flesh. V'kotvin binkom hasear, but you write on the outer side, closer to the hair. V'chol ha'kotev ala klaf b'mkom se'ar, o shekatav b'gvil u'v'duchsustus b'mkom basar. If you write it on the wrong side, on the klaf, on the outer parchment, you write on the outer side, or on the inner parchment, you write on the inner side, pasul, it's disqualified.
How can
So now, in today's day and age, we don't do any of this. What we do is you have the actual, this is a piece of cloth, this is a piece of parchment. You have an actual hide, you take a hide, and with machinery today, we're able to just shave off. We shave off a ton of the outer side and a ton of the inner side till you're left with just what's in the middle. So we don't have, because you can feel it, yeah. The gvil is when it's raw and thick. And the klaf and the duchsustus is if you divide it in half. We don't do no dividing, we just kind of compress it. So you end up with this.
The top and which one is the bottom?
Huh? So you can actually feel, one is like more rough and one is more soft. And they write on the softer side. And that's it. We write tefillin, mezuzahs, Torah scroll, all three on the same type of material.
in general, like working with leather is considered very difficult work.
Yes.
It's very stinky.
Yeah, I know. It's true. When I pass it around, you can feel it. This is the cloth. Huh? Very sturdy, and it's also this way. It's much lighter and much more attractive. If you look at the really old Torahs, it was dark skin.
Can they get they take the layer of the top, the layer of the bottom, and then they take the middle layer. So it's
Exactly. So it's all the same.
And it's not
Can they
cheap.
get
Not
more than?
cheap.
Excuse me.
Not cheap at all.
More than one layer out of. Can they get more sheets?
No, they don't. They don't. No.
Centerpiece.
Every hide is one. It's one piece. Yeah, they don't divide it anymore. Yeah,
And it's like expensive material, isn't it? It's leather considered
it's live, so of course, yeah. That's why they cost so much. Halacha tet. Afal pi shekachi halacha leMoshe miSinai. Even though this is the halacha leMoshe miSinai, this is the way you're supposed to do it. Im katav sefer Torah ala klaf. If you wrote a sefer Torah on a half of the hide, you split it in half, and you wrote it on the outer half. Kasher, that's still kosher. But lo ne'emar gvil. The only reason we say it has to be gvil is ela lema'et duchsustus. is to exclude the inner half, the duchsustus half. She'im katav alav hasefer pasul. That if you would write the Sefer Torah on it, it would be disqualified. Same thing the opposite. V'chenim katav et hamezuzah al haklaf or al hagvil. If you write a mezuzah on any other type of parchment, the outer parchment, the rough parchment, kasher, it's all kosher. Lo amru al haduchsustus ela lemitzvah. We only said it should be written on the inner half for the mitzvah, the ideal mitzvah. But if you don't do the ideal mitzvah, it's also fine. And again, today we do it all on the same type of klaf, for Torahs, for tefillin, for mezuzah, it's all the same thing. Halacha yud. En kotvin sfarim tefillin mezuzot al gabei or behemat tmeya. We don't write Sefer Torahs, tefillin, mezuzahs on the hide of a non-kosher animal, v'of v'chaya tmeim, or a bird or a beast that's non-kosher. Aval kotvin al gabei or behema v'chaya v'of tehorim. Instead, we write on the hides of kosher animals, beasts, and birds. Va'afilu nevelot utrefot shalahen. Even if it's animals that died. If a cow died, you can still use the hide for tefillin. Huh? Chaya, like a deer. Tzvi is called chaya kshera. Huh? Behema pi Torah zerak mashe domesticated. So shor, se, v'kesev. Ayil ken nachon. Ve'en kotvin al gabei or hadaga tahor, but we don't write it on the hide of a fish that's pure. Mipnei hazuhama, because of the dirt secretions. She'en hazuhama poseket be'ibuda. Even if you work a fish skin, it doesn't stop. Apparently, in those days, like bleeding out, oozing out some liquid, so it wouldn't be proper for the Torah writing. Halacha Yud Aleph. Gvil shel Sefer Torah uklaf shel Tefillin o shel Sefer Torah. The parchment that's used for a Torah scroll, or the klaf that's used for Tefillin or a Torah scroll. Sarich la'abedot han lishman. Oh, they must be worked with intent. You have to be thinking when you put it into the mixture, the thing that kind of helps shave off the hair and the stuff, the lime. You have to have intent that you're doing it for the purpose of the holiness of Tefillin or Torah scrolls. V'im ibdan shelo lishman. If you worked it not with the right intent, psulin, they're disqualified. Lefichach, therefore, im ibdan hakuti psulin. Some texts have goy. It means Gentile. If a non-Jewish person works the leathers, they're disqualified. Afal pi sha'amarnu lo lakuti. Even if we instruct the goy, la'abed or zeh l'shem ha'sefer l'shem ha'tefillin, to work this skin for a Sefer Torah or for tefillin, psulin, it's still disqualified, because we have a rule in halacha, sha'akuti al dat atzmo hu oseh. When a non-Jew operates, he operates with his own intent, lo al dat hasocheroto, not with the intent of the person who hired him. So even if you give him instructions, no good. Nevertheless,
it has to be Jews working.
Has to all be Jews, according to the Rambam. L'maaseh, I believe that the Alter Rebbe writes in Shulchan Aruch that it's enough to tell a goy, if he's there and you're watching him, you can tell him to have in mind when he puts in the leather into the tannery that he should do it lishma, and then as long as you're involved at some point in the process, that's okay. So you don't have to be fully. But yeah, even today in Machon Stam, in places that they do these stuff, they have typically Jews working.
How do they get those parallel lines across perfectly?
Oh, we'll see soon about that. Lefichach, therefore, kol davar shetzarich ma'aseh lishmo. Anything which has to be done lishmo for a certain intent, im asau hakuti pasul. If a guy does it, it's disqualified. Umezuzah, that's all Torah scroll on tefillin. But a mezuzah eina tzricha ha'abada lishma, doesn't require to be worked for express intent. Halacha Yud Bet, halacha Moshe miSinai. It is another halacha from Moshe on Mount Sinai, she'en kotvin sefer Torah v'lo mezuzah ela bisirtut. We only write a Torah scroll or a mezuzah with sirtut, with lining. If you saw the klaf when I passed it out before, there's clearly lines that are ruled into the parchment. You can feel it. This is not exactly the right tool. Rabbi Tarabam gave me this. He uses this to erase. To erase if he made a mistake or scratch off, or to cut the parchment, or also to cut the feather that he uses. But it's something like this. It's like a stylus or an awl. You use this, and you rule the lines in, and this way you write it on a straight line. So, Torah and mezuzah. Aval tefillin einan tzrichin sirtut. Tefillin don't require the ruling, because they're anyways covered, and the whole idea of the sirtut is that it should look nice. But if you're covering it, it doesn't matter how it looks. Nevertheless, today, we still do sirtut on tefillin also. So the little portions that I passed out before, you can see, they have lines. Umutar lichtov tefillin umezuzah shalom min aktav. You can write, if you're well-versed by heart in the Torah, you can write the tefillin or the mezuzah without having another piece of paper to consult from. You just write it by heart. Sha'akol gorsin, parashat el. Everybody knows these parashas Baal Peh by heart. Aval sefer Torah, but a Torah scroll, asur lichtov afilu ot achat, shalom min aktav. It's forbidden to write even one letter if you're not looking at another Torah scroll or another chumash. You have to have a manuscript that you're consulting. Halacha Yud Gimel. Sefer Torah Tefillin u'Mezuzot shekatvan apikoros. If an apostate Jew, some texts have a min, which is even worse, he doesn't believe in God, a heretic essentially, writes a Torah scroll, tefillin or mezuzahs, yisarfu, they must be burnt. Katvan kuti, if a goy wrote them, or Yisrael mumar, or a Jew who had changed his religion, or moser beyad anas, or a person who's a traitor, he gives over Jewish people or Jewish property to the hands of terrorists, or eved or isha or katan, or a slave or a woman or a child. So here we don't say they have to be burnt. It's not so bad. Hare elu psulin, they're still disqualified. V'yiganzu, and we bury them. Shneimar, as it says, ukshartam uchtavtam. In Shema we say, you should tie them and then you should write them. Which means, we learn out, since the two verses are one next to another, kol shemuzhar al hakshira u'ma'amin ba, only a person who was commanded about tying tefillin and believes in it, hu shekotev, he can write. If you have to tie, you can write. Women don't have to tie tefillin, so they can't write. If you found a tefillin or a Torah scroll in the hands of an apostate, but you don't know who wrote it, you don't know who wrote them. Maybe he did, maybe not. Yiganzu. You have to assume that they're bad, and you bury them. You don't have to burn them, because maybe he didn't write them, but you have to bury them.
Even if you check them and they're okay?
Check them, okay, doesn't matter, because it has to be done with proper intent. Nimtzu'u biyad kuti. If you found tefillin or Torah scrolls in the hands of a goy, ksherim, they're kosher. However, ve'en lokchin sfarim tefillin u'mezuzot min hakutim biyoter al dmehem. We never buy Torah scrolls, tefillin and mezuzah from the goyim for more than their actual worth. Shelo lahargilo tan legonvano legozlan. So we don't get them used to stealing. It was like a big business. You go to the Jewish shul, steal tefillin, and you go sell them on the market, and you make money. So we don't buy it for more than what it's worth. Halacha Yudalid. Sefer Torah Tefillin u'Mezuzot shekatvan al gabei or behema chayav of hatmein. A Torah scroll, tefillin or mezuzah, if you wrote it on a hide of an unkosher animal, beast, or bird, or al gabei orot she'einam me'ubadin, or on top of a hide that wasn't properly worked, or shekatav Sefer Torah or tefillin al or shelo yibdam nishman, or you wrote a Torah scroll or tefillin on a skin that was not worked with proper intent, hare elu psulin. You should know it's disqualified. You can't use it. It's not like it's initially you shouldn't use it, but if you did it, it's fine. No, even if you did it, it's not fine. Halakha tetvav hakotev sefer Torah or tefillin or mezuzah. Good guy, a good scribe, writing a Torah scroll, tefillin or mezuzah, ubishat ktiva lo hayta lo kavana. While he's writing, he wasn't thinking about anything. No intent. The katav azkara min ha'azkarot shabahen shelo lishman. And that he ended up writing azkara means Hashem's name, one of God's names in the tefillin or the Torah scroll or the mezuzah without the proper intent. Psulin. Disqualifies the tefillin. It's one of those things that you really can't see. Like you're looking at a tefillin and it looks perfectly fine, and something was wrong with the writing. You really have to trust the sofer. That's why a scribe has to be a real Yirei Shamayim. He has to be a God-fearing man. Because if you write a tefillin, and this takes hours, and you mess up on one of the intents, who's going to know? No one's going to know. You sell it on the market, it looks perfectly fine. But if you're proper and God-fearing, then you admit, I didn't write it properly, I have to rewrite it. So if you wrote it without proper intent, it's pasul. Lefichach, therefore, hakotevet Hashem. When a person is writing Hashem's name, afilu melech Yisrael shoel b'shlomo. Even if a Jewish king is asking how you're doing, lo yeshivenu, you don't answer him, you don't interrupt, you have to be focused. Hayakotev shnayim or shlosha shemot. But if you're writing 2 or 3 names, in Torah you have like Hashem's name twice. Sometimes Hashem. Or in Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. You have 3 names right there in a row. You can stop in between each one and then answer the guy's question. But each one has to be done with proper intent. Some sofrim or even have a minhag to go to the mikveh. Every time they write Hashem's name. Imagine? Huh? Not all, no. But definitely having intent.
You don't have to wash, right?
You wash your hands. There's different laws. I'm not sure all the details. You have to ask your Betelabam. He would know all these things. Halachat Zayin. Hatovelet hakulmos lichtobet Hashem. When you dip your feather into the ink to write Hashem's name, lo yatchil me'ot Hashem. You should never begin with the letter of Hashem's name. Aval matchilhu me'ot shelefanav. Start with the letter before. Why? Because if you dip into the ink, it can get a little too inky. And if you write the first letter, you may have to rub it out. And you can't rub out Hashem's name. So start with the letter before, and if there's any mistakes, you fix it over there, and then you move on to writing Hashem's name. Shachach lichtov et Hashem kulo. Wow. Let's say you just totally skipped it. At the end of a line, it says Vayidaber. Instead of Hashem el Moshe Lemor, you just wrote Vayidaber el Moshe Lemor. You skip God's name completely. Toleo to ben hashitot. You can hang it between the columns, between the lines. You know how you see in a Torah scroll, there's like a bunch of columns, and a bunch of lines. So you can hang it out of the line. It's fine. You just add it on. Aval miktzat Hashem bashita umikzato talui pasul. But you can't have half-half. It can't be half on the line and half hanging off the line. That's disqualified. Ubishara tevot, other words in the Torah scroll of Tefillin, im shachach, if you forgot to write them, kotev miktzat hateva bashita umiktzata lemala. You write part of it on the line and part of it on top of the line. You don't go hanging out, you go on top. But medvarim amurim, when do we say this? B'sefer Torah, on a Torah scroll. Aval b'mezuzah utfilin. But on mezuzah and tefillin, they must be perfect. And tolin bahen afilu ot achat. You don't hang any lines, any letters. Ela im shachach afilu ot achat. If you forgot one letter, gonez ma shekatav v'kotev acheret. You have to put away, throw it away what you wrote, and write it again. Umutar lichtov et Hashem. Al makom hagered, you could write Hashem's name over ink that you scratched out. Val makom hamachak, or over ink that got erased, faded out by itself. Bikulan, on all three. Torah scrolls, tefillin, mezuzah, no problem. You can write Hashem's name. And in fact, in some of our Torahs, you see they're old Torahs, you can tell, like when somebody scraped it out and rewrote it, it's okay. Halacha Yud Zayin, kotvei sfarim, tefillin umezuzot. Those that are writing, the scribes who write Torah scrolls, tefillin and mezuzah, asur lahem lahapech hayiri'ah al paneha. So here we have it, the guy's writing a mezuzah, and it's like this. So you can't go on a break and then put it, turn it over while you're on break. Ella pores aleha beged o kofla. You must put something on top of it, keep it face up, or fold it. But never face down. Face down is disrespect. Halacha Yudchet. Sefer Torah Tefillin u'Mezuzah she'amar hasofer achar sheyatzu mitachat yado. Okay, this is a real cruel scribe. He wrote the Torah scroll Tefillin u'Mezuzah, and he tells you after he gives it to you, haha lo katavti hazkarot shebehem lishman. I didn't write Hashem's name with the proper intent.
After you paid him.
So you didn't pay him yet, but he thinks you're going to still pay him. So he tells you, I basically messed you up. I didn't write the scroll properly. Eino ne'eman leposlan. Very interesting halacha. We don't believe him to disqualify the names. Aval ne'eman hu lehafsid kol schara. But we believe him enough to not pay him, but we can still use the Torah scroll.
It's a good punishment.
V'lama eino ne'eman leposlan. Why not? He's the scribe. Like why shouldn't we believe him? Shema lo nitkaven, because maybe the sofer only had in mind ela lehafsid halokeach o azeh scharo. He only wants to make the guy be a loser. He wants to make the customer who's buying or the person that commissioned him to lose out. V'domeh, and therefore he thinks she'eino mafsid ba'amira zu ela schar ha'azkarot. He thinks he's only going to lose from his payment the amount it took to write Hashem's name.
Such an unrealistic scenario.
Right? So he thinks you're going to pay him for the whole Torah scroll. You're just going to take off the amount of Hashem's names, and this way you're going to end up with a bad Sefer Torah, and I'm going to make some money. So we don't do that. He made a mistake. We punish him, don't pay him at all, and we keep the Torah scroll and it's fine. Lefichach, therefore, im amar, if he said, not about Hashem's name, if he said, Sefer Torah zeh o tefillin elu, this Torah scroll, this tefillin, orot shalahem, enam mubadot lishma. The skin is not worked with proper intent, so then, mitoch shene'eman lahafsid scharo, ne'eman lefoslan. Over here, the same way he's believed to lose his payment, he's also believed to disqualify the Torah tefillin. Because this everybody knows. If the skin wasn't worked properly, there's no payment at all. So there's no room for pilpulim ways to think about it. When it comes to Hashem's name, people might not know. He thinks you only get a little discount. When it comes to the skin, everybody knows that that's inherently disqualifying to the whole Torah scroll. Halacha Yutet, en kotvin tefillin u'mezuzah ela biktav ashurit. You can only write tefillin and mezuzahs with a special calligraphy, writing known as ktav ashurit. That's what we have in the Torah scrolls today. The Yitiro Basfarim, with Torah scrolls themselves, not tefillin or mezuzah, they have a special permission, lichtov af biyevani bilvad. There used to be a time when they could write it in Greek.
The Torah in
Yeah, they used to be able to write Torah in Greek. However, ukvar nishka yevani min ha'olam v'nishtabesh ve'avad. The original Greek sunk out of the world. It got lost and many mistakes in it. And therefore, lefichach en kotvin hayom shloshtan ela ashurit. Today we only write all three, Torah scroll, tefillin, and mezuzah, with the Ashuri script. You have to be very careful when you write this script. No letter should stick to another one. Any letter which is not surrounded on all four sides by parchment is disqualified. Any letter which, if you would bring a child who's not wise or stupid, average child, and he can't read it, it's disqualified. We use this a lot. If you find a Torah scroll and it has a problem, you bring a kid who's not smart enough.
Ketubas too.
Ketubas are not, though, they're not biblical, so that they're fine. But a Torah scroll, you have to be able to read it.
I've seen
Yeah? They ask a kid?
Yeah, at the time they ask the kid, they bring a kid if something wasn't written right.
I've never seen it. We had in Shul here an incident where they had a letter, a Vav. We weren't sure if it was a Yud or a Vav. And so we brought one of the kids to come see. The thing with the kid is that he knows how to read letters but not words. So if he knows how to read the word, then he can make up in his mind what the word means. But if he only knows letters, and he'll just say, is it a Vav or a Yud? And he'll tell you what he thinks, and then it's good, or a Vav or a Resh. No.
Unless it's wrong.
Huh? Yeah, well, if it's wrong, it's wrong. But if you can't tell if it's wrong or not, so you ask a kid. Lefichach, therefore, tzarich lizaher b'tzurat ha'otiyot. You have to be very careful when you make the pictures of the letters. Shalot tidmeh hayud levav v'lo vav liyud. You shouldn't make a yud similar to a vav or a vav to a yud. See over here, it's the same, almost the same thing. Just a vav is a little longer, so you can't make the mistake here. V'lo kaf lebet v'lo bet lekaf. Same thing over here. They have a little difference at the bottom. A kaf is round and a bet is square. You can't make those comparisons. V'lo dalet l'resh, v'lo resh l'dalet. These two also, they have a difference in the top, the back top. So you can't make them similar. And anything similar to that, ad shi'arutz kol hakareh bahen, to the point that everybody should be able to run through them and read them very easily. Halacha chaf, the final halacha for today. Or shehaya nakuv. If you have a parchment that had a hole in it, lo yichtav al gabei nekev. You can't write over the hole, even if it's a small hole. However, v'chol nekev shehadio overet alav, if the ink will literally pass over it, it's that small of a hole, eno nekev, that's not considered a hole, mutar lichtov alav, you can write on it. Lefichach, therefore, mutar lichtov al gabei or ha'of shemitabed, you can write on top of a skin of a chicken or a bird that was worked, because they have very small holes because of the feathers, where the feathers were pulled out, but it's okay because it's very, very small. Nikav ha'or achar shenichtav. Oh, what if the leather got a hole after it was written? So im nikav betoch ha'ot, if the hole was made inside the letter, could go on toch hey or toch mem, inside of a hey or inside of a mem, v'chein b'shar ha'otiyot or other letters. Kasher, then it's kosher. You see over here? You have a hey and a little hole inside it. Yeah, so it's literally now, but it's disrupted. And we said before that every letter has to be surrounded by all four sides by parchment. But it doesn't matter. Since it's inside the letter, it's okay. Nikav biyarech shel ot ad shenifseka, but if it was written, the hole was on the leg of the letter, and now it got cut in half, like over here on a vav, hole comes on the letter, and the vav is cut in half. Im nishtayer mimena malo ot ktana. If on top of the hole you have enough to be a small letter of the same, like this could pass for a vav, the top part, then it's kasher, then it's kosher. Vehu, that's only provided, shalot tidmeh lo ot acheret. Doesn't look like another letter. But if it does looks like a yud now it's bad. But if not even a little bit of letter was left over, then psula, then it's disqualified, because the hole made it disqualified. You have to go and either throw it out or fix the hole.